Have you ever noticed that the moment you finally go quiet, the moment you stop chasing, stop explaining, and stop proving your heart, things do not calm down at all. They get darker, sharper, and strangely more intense. That is not random. That is not closure. That is the moment the other person feels your energy slipping out of their hands. And when they feel that control fading, they often show a side of themselves you were never supposed to fully see. Not the charming side, not the sorry side, the desperate side, the calculating side, the side that would rather shake your peace than lose access to you. And here is what catches so many people off guard. The final move is usually not loud at first. It may not look like rage. It may not even look like revenge. It can come dressed as concern, sadness, sweetness, confusion, or even love. But underneath it is one goal: to make you question yourself just long enough to step back into a cycle you were finally escaping. So, if you have ever felt like the worst part started after you got stronger, after you pulled back, after you finally said enough, stay with me, because this is where everything starts making sense. And by the end, you will not only see the pattern more clearly, you will know exactly why their last move feels so dirty, so confusing, and so effective, and most importantly, how to make sure it no longer works on you. Most people think the ending begins when someone leaves the house, blocks a number, ends the relationship, or says the words out loud. But that is usually not where it starts. It starts much earlier, and it starts inside you. It begins the day you stop spending your whole night replaying arguments in your head. It begins when you no longer feel the urge to explain your pain for the 100th time. It begins when your tears turn into tired silence, when your panic turns into distance, when your need to be understood starts dying off. That is the real shift, and people who depend on emotional control often feel that shift before you ever say a word. They may not understand you deeply, they may not care for your pain in a healthy way, but they absolutely notice when your reactions stop feeding the connection. They notice when the guilt stops working. They notice when the drama stops pulling you in. They notice when your face changes, when your tone flattens, when your eyes stop asking for fairness. That is when something in them starts to panic, because the relationship may still look the same from the outside, but emotionally it is already changing. You are no longer revolving around them. You are stepping out of the emotional gravity that kept you trapped. And once they feel that, once they sense that your mind is becoming your own again, they often start escalating. Watch that closely. That moment matters more than most people realize. For a controlling person, the relationship is often built on one hidden structure: influence. Sometimes that influence is obvious. Sometimes it is subtle. It can sound like criticism that makes you doubt your memory. It can sound like guilt that makes you feel selfish for having needs. It can look like emotional highs and lows that keep your mind stuck on their moods instead of your own well-being. As long as those patterns work, they feel safe. As long as they can predict your reaction, pull your attention back, or shape your decisions, they feel powerful. But the second that starts to fail, the emotional ground under them begins to crack. That is why the change can feel so sudden. The old tricks stop landing. The tension rises. The sweetness becomes colder. The pressure gets heavier. And what once looked like minor manipulation can grow into blame, intimidation, emotional outbursts, false promises, sudden affection, or open hostility. They may try one mask, then another, because the goal is not honesty. The goal is to find the one tactic that still gets a response. If guilt does not work, they try anger. If anger does not work, they try charm. If charm does not work, they may try fear, pity, confusion, or public sympathy. It can feel chaotic when you are inside it, but from a distance, the pattern is very clear. They are not reacting to love slipping away. They are reacting to control slipping away. And once you understand that, a lot of their so-called mixed signals stop looking mixed at all. This is where many people get confused, because they assume these final behaviors must come from heartbreak. They think, maybe this person is just hurt. Maybe they are scared to lose me. Maybe deep down this means they care. And yes, every human being can feel loss. But in this kind of dynamic, what often drives the final scramble is not healthy love. It is the fear of losing access. Access to your attention, access to your emotions, access to your sympathy, access to your energy. That is why the behavior can look so contradictory. They may insult you and tell you they miss you in the same breath. They may attack your character in public and beg for another chance in private. They may tell others you are cold while texting you late at night with memories, apologies, and promises. If you look at that through the lens of real love, it feels insane. If you look at it through the lens of power, it suddenly makes sense. They do not need positive attention as much as they need proof that they still matter in your nervous system. Even your anger can feel useful to them if it means you are still emotionally hooked. Even your long explanations can feel like a win if they prove they still have the power to pull words, tears, and energy out of you. This is why the final stage can feel so exhausting. You are not dealing with one clear emotion. You are dealing with a rotating set of strategies designed to keep them psychologically important in your life. And once you see that clearly, it becomes harder to mistake manipulation for connection. One of the dirtiest moves often starts quietly, through other people. When direct control begins to fail, some people stop trying to control you only through private conversations and begin trying to control how the world sees you. This is where the story starts getting edited. They may not launch into an obvious attack right away. Instead, they drop careful comments. They tell selective stories. They act confused, hurt, or concerned. They leave out the pressure they put on you, the lies they told, the damage they caused, and they present a version of events where they look wounded and you look unstable, selfish, cruel, or impossible to please. This is what makes the tactic so dangerous. It often includes tiny pieces of truth wrapped in distortion. A real argument becomes evidence that you are always angry. A real boundary becomes proof that you are heartless. Your exhaustion becomes disrespect. Your self-protection becomes abandonment. And before you even know what is happening, people around you may be looking at you through a story that was built to protect their image and weaken yours. That is the trap, because your natural instinct is to defend yourself, to correct every lie, to explain every missing piece. But the more emotional your defense becomes, the easier it can be for them to point and say, "See, this is what I meant, stay with me here because this part matters." Not every person will believe the false picture, but enough people may hesitate, question, or pull away to make you feel isolated. And isolation is useful for anyone trying to regain control. Then comes one of the most confusing turns of all. Suddenly, the person who ignored your pain may present themselves as the one who was deeply hurt, the one who was betrayed, the one who gave everything and got nothing back. This role reversal can feel unreal, especially if you spent months or years trying to get them to acknowledge even a small part of what happened. But now, with strong emotion and perfect timing, they may tell others that you changed, that you became cold, that you abandoned them, that they do not understand what went wrong. And because they may sound emotional and believable, people who were not there for the full story may feel sympathy for them very quickly. This victim position does several things at once. It pulls attention away from their behavior. It avoids accountability. It gathers support, and sometimes it pressures you to soften, explain, or come back just to stop looking like the bad person in someone else's story. That is why this tactic works so well. It hits both your heart and your reputation at the same time. You may start thinking, maybe I should say something. Maybe I should clear this up. Maybe I should show people what really happened. And while there are moments when calm truth matters, there is also a deeper truth here. You cannot always out-explain a person who is committed to misunderstanding you in public and rewriting you in private. The more important work is staying grounded in reality even when someone else is performing pain to escape responsibility. That is hard. It hurts. But seeing it clearly can save you from walking back into the role they need you to play. And just when you think the distance is becoming real, another tactic often appears, the sudden pull back in. The message you never expected, the apology that sounds perfect, the soft voice, the memory, the confession, the promise to change. This is what makes the final stage so dangerous, because it can arrive disguised as the exact thing you waited for during the relationship. Accountability, tenderness, reflection, regret. They may suddenly say all the words you needed months ago. They may admit fault. They may sound humble. They may even seem transformed. Sometimes it is not even romance. Sometimes it is a crisis, an emergency, a bad day, a health scare, a financial problem, a lonely night, a sudden need only you can understand. And if you are a caring person, your heart can move before your mind catches up. That is the point. The goal is often not true repair. The goal is renewed access, renewed contact, renewed influence, a fresh opening into your emotions. And because the moment feels softer than the chaos before it, people often mistake it for healing. But pause here and notice the deeper pattern. Does the change come with long-term responsibility or only urgent emotion? Does it come with steady behavior or just a powerful moment? Does it respect your boundaries or does it rush past them? These questions matter because a beautiful message can still be bait. A sad story can still be a hook. A gentle tone can still carry the same old need for control. And if that truth stings, stay with it, because seeing the bait is the first step toward not swallowing it. At the center of all of this is one simple truth. They want a reaction. Not always a reunion, not always peace. A reaction. That reaction can be anger, it can be guilt, it can be fear, it can be hope, it can be one long message where you finally say everything. It can be a phone call where you defend yourself. It can be checking their page, asking mutual friends questions, reading between every line, or breaking your own silence just to prove one last point. Any of that can feed the cycle. Because when you react strongly, they get confirmation that they still live inside your emotional system. That is why the tactics can look so different while serving the same purpose. One day it is affection. The next day, it is blame. 1 hour, it is an apology. The next hour, it is an accusation. One moment, it is a memory meant to soften you. The next moment, it is something cruel meant to provoke you. The common thread is not the style. The common thread is the pull. They are trying to drag your attention back into a pattern where your peace depends on what they do next. And human beings are deeply vulnerable to this because we naturally want fairness. We want truth. We want things to make sense. We want to answer the lie, fix the misunderstanding, respond to the pain, rescue the sadness, defend our name, and close the circle. But some circles stay open because the opening itself is the mechanism of control. The breakthrough happens when you stop treating every emotional hook like a question you must answer. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the moment the hook misses. This is why leaving is not always the same thing as being free. A person can move out, block a number, end a conversation, and still spend every day emotionally trapped in the aftermath. The body is gone, but the mind is still negotiating, still replaying, still trying to solve the puzzle, still waiting for the apology, still hoping for clear proof, still wondering if maybe this time was different. That is not failure. That is what emotional entanglement often feels like after long confusion. But real freedom begins when the center of your life stops being their behavior. It begins when you stop measuring your healing by whether they understand you. It begins when you no longer need them to confirm what happened before you allow yourself to believe it. That shift is powerful because it moves authority back where it belongs, into your own experience. You stop asking, did it really happen the way I felt it? You start saying, I know what repeated pain felt like. I know what constant confusion did to me. I know what my body learned to fear. I know how small I became trying to keep peace. And once your truth no longer depends on their agreement, many of their strongest tactics begin to weaken. Guilt loses force. Sudden sweetness becomes easier to read. Public performance feels less magical. Emotional emergencies stop owning your nervous system. Little by little, you stop organizing your life around managing, decoding, or preparing for them. And that is when the whole structure really begins to fall apart because the structure needed your emotional participation to stay alive. What makes this process even harder is that the final move often attacks your weakest places, not your strongest ones. It goes after your compassion, your fairness, your loyalty, your need to be understood, your hope that people can change if you just love them clearly enough. That is why good people get caught in these cycles for so long, not because they are foolish, but because they keep bringing honesty into a game built on confusion. They keep bringing empathy into a pattern built on advantage. They keep bringing open-hearted logic into a system that rewards emotional exhaustion. So if you have been judging yourself for how long it took, stop there for a second. Survival inside a confusing bond rarely looks neat. Sometimes strength looks messy before it looks clean. Sometimes waking up begins with one small boundary, then another, then a setback, then a moment of clarity you almost miss. Sometimes you leave physically and go back emotionally 10 more times before your mind fully catches up. That does not erase your progress. It explains why the final stage can feel so powerful. It is designed to hit the old wiring. It is designed to make the past feel urgent again. It is designed to turn your healing into doubt. But notice this carefully. The fact that the tactic hurts does not mean it is true. The fact that it reaches you does not mean you belong there. The fact that you feel shaken does not mean you are going backward. Sometimes being triggered is simply proof that you touched the wound, and touching the wound is often part of finally healing it. So, when they realize you are truly done, what you are often seeing is not deep love waking up at the last second. It is pressure rising because access is closing, the rumor spreading, the role reversal, the perfect apology, the dramatic crisis, the sweetness after cruelty, the cruelty after sweetness. The bait is different, but the motive underneath can be the same. They feel your attention slipping away, and they want it back. Not because they finally learned how to protect your peace, but because your detachment removes a kind of power they got used to having. And this is where your strongest response becomes very different from what pain might tell you to do. Your strongest response is not to argue harder, not to explain longer, not to prove your goodness to people committed to the wrong story, not to beg for the truth to be seen, not to wait for the apology that would make the whole thing feel complete. Your strongest response is to keep choosing clarity over chaos, to keep choosing boundaries over bait, to keep choosing your own steady reality over the performance happening around you. That may look quiet from the outside, but it is not small. It is one of the most powerful things a person can do. Because the moment you stop needing something from the person who once controlled your emotions, the balance begins to shift for real. And if this is hitting close to home, keep listening, because the final piece is the one most people miss. The final piece is this. Closure is not something they hand you. Peace is not something they approve. Freedom is not something they grant when they finally decide to be honest. Those are things you begin building the moment you stop waiting for them to become someone they have consistently shown they do not want to be. That truth can feel heavy at first because hope is hard to let go of, especially the hope that one day they will understand the damage, speak the truth, and make it all make sense. But healing gets stronger when you stop tying it to their awakening. You do not need a perfect final conversation. You do not need everyone to understand. You do not need every lie corrected in real time. You do not need them to say sorry in the right voice with the right tears. What you need is a deeper loyalty to your own peace, a deeper trust in what repeated patterns already taught you, a deeper commitment to protecting the self that had to shrink just to survive the relationship. And when that commitment becomes real, something incredible happens. Their final move loses its shine. The guilt has less grip. The false urgency weakens. The mask slips faster. The performance looks more obvious, and the part of you that used to panic starts choosing distance instead. That is not coldness. That is wisdom. That is not revenge. That is recovery. That is not giving up on love. That is finally refusing to keep paying for connection with your sanity. So, if you are standing in that moment right now, if things got uglier the second you got calmer, if the story started changing the moment you stopped defending yourself, if the apology came only after your silence became real, if the crisis suddenly appeared when your boundaries became firm, do not rush to call that love. Look again, slow it down, ask what the pattern has always been, ask what happens after the sweet words fade, ask whether the change is consistent, accountable, and respectful, or whether it is simply dramatic, emotional, and urgent. Ask whether this pulls you toward peace or back into confusion. Those questions can protect your future, because the dirtiest final move is not always the lie, the smear, or the fake apology by itself. It is the attempt to make you abandon your own clarity just as you are finally finding it. It is the attempt to make you doubt your exit at the exact moment your freedom is becoming real. And that is why your answer does not have to be louder. It has to be steadier. Keep moving forward. Keep your boundaries where they are. Keep your truth close, even if others do not fully see it yet. The person who once had power over your emotions does not get to define your reality forever. And the day you stop reaching back for permission, apology, or understanding from the very place that hurt you is the day you begin to feel something far better than revenge. You begin to feel your own peace, your own power, your own life returning to you.